I'm talking about grief. I'm going to go into a little bit more on grief. I was feeling called to share this particular content because I have talked to a few people that have been experiencing this and dealing with this. And because I'm called to bring these things out, shed light on them, and also explain them in a way that's simple for people to understand. So today I'm sharing about grief, and I actually was dealing with that a little bit. I didn't even realize my mother-in-law birthday was yesterday, and she has transitioned. And I was feeling something, and I actually was thinking about her like a lot in the last couple of days. And I was talking to my husband about her. She was a beautiful, beautiful spirit. She had a hard life, went through a lot, and she had 11 kids. So that's a lot too. But I was thinking about her. And then I also was thinking about my own grandmother, in the last probably month or so and dealing with that whole situation, although she's been gone even longer. But, just like I spoke about on yesterday, grief is not linear. It doesn't just, you check off boxes and then it's over. That's not how grief works. Grief works totally differently. So I'm going to talk about um, some ways that we experience more than five emotions through grief. I have a few that nobody really talks about, and nobody has warned us about these things. They just kind of share. And so this stage is administrative overload. So if you are the person that has to be taking care of all the paperwork and stuff, if you are the person that, might be the executor of the will, or if you might have been the person that is, now the matriarch because the matriarch has gone, transitioned. And so you're grieving, but first, you got to get paperwork done. You got to get stuff ready to get this person in the ground if that's what they're doing, or, to cremate or whatever. It's like you have all these things to do. So you really, in that stage, it's hard to even have time to grieve at all. And so a lot of times your grieving is postponed because you have all these things to do. Now, if you had a situation like we did with my mother-in-law, she had already taken care of everything. She paid for her funeral. Everything was done. Everything. I mean, we really didn't have to do anything but show up, which I plugged this phone in. It was amazing because when you're in grief, you still have administrative things to do. You still have stuff to do. So after you finish doing all this paperwork and stuff, then, a lot of times then you can get a chance to grieve. The second stage is the I'm fine stage. I'm fine, and I'm going to say it like it is. Lie. It's a lie. You know it's a lie, but you say it out of your mouth. You develop a PhD level ability to say, I'm fine, while crying in the stairwells. You become fluent in smiling through your teeth. I'm fine. I'm fine. And this is what you do. Um, I believe that a part of it is because you have to function. I believe that a part of it is you have to function. And in order to function, this is the way that we've been conditioned is to just keep going and say, I'm fine. I'm fine. I remember when I was at my grandmother's funeral, everybody was concerned about me because we had the closest relationship, I think, of probably any of my cousins. And so everybody was concerned because I was my grandma's girl and everybody knew that. And so everybody kept asking me, how are you? Are you okay? Are you okay? At the funeral, are you okay? Are you okay? I was getting annoyed with it because I felt like I was okay. And I was okay until at the end of the funeral, we went to view the body. And then I was not okay. I was not okay. But all up until that point, and even the week before and everything, people were calling me, how are you okay? Are you okay? Now, mind you, they did leave me and my family off of the program. Now, the way I thought about it then, I was really, really upset. Not that it mattered because my grandmother was who she was and she was my person and she knew that and I knew that. But other people, of course, were jealous and there was a lot of that type of stuff that happened and that's fine. That's fine. I'm over it now. It's been 20 years. But at that particular moment in that day, when I recognized it, and my mom tried really hard to soften it, and I think they got another program redone later to put us on or some stupid stuff. I don't even know how that thing went down, but I realized, that jealousy was involved because they didn't put me, my husband, my kids down on the obituary or anything. And they put people that weren't even married on there and, kids that weren't even my grandmother's grandkids and things. And so of course, I felt some kind of way about that at that moment. I did. I felt really mad and I was really pissed at my damn family, for the way that they were treating me. And I didn't do nothing wrong. I was only ever always loved to any of them and all of that. And so that thing really bothered me. And I don't think I realized how much it bothered me that they just left us off the program, just left me off. Didn't even put me on. And the thing, the thing that gets me is how could you forget me because I lived with them? I lived with my grandparents. So that was another type of grief that I experienced that I didn't even think about until actually right now I'm talking about it. We've talked about it in the past, but to be honest with you, I left it in the past because it pissed me off so bad that I thought I probably should leave this over here. I should leave this behind in the ground. I should bury it, whatever, something, because it made me so angry. And I don't think people realize how angry I was about that. Because here you got an obituary of a woman who was like my mother, who raised me mostly. And you didn't even put me on the obituary as if I did not exist. But you know what I said? God knew I existed. My grandmother knew who I was and that I was there. And so, just some jealous people not wanting to acknowledge my presence and my awareness, it's okay, but I grieved through that too. That was a grief. It was like a double grief, because the first thing is I lost my grandmother who was like a mother and really the only person that I ever felt like ever understood me, and so I lost her. And then, you people then put me on the obituary. Can you imagine how that could have hurt? So that was a layer for me of I'm fine lie because I wasn't fine. I wasn't fine probably for, I would say another at least 2 years after that. I wasn't fine. But these are the lies that we tell. The other stage is sudden laughter and then guilt. So you make a joke about your loved one. And we did this a lot because my grandmother was funny, and she loved to laugh. And so you make a joke about your loved one and then you feel awful. And then you do it again. Because dark humor is sometimes the only thing cutting through the grief fog. Sometimes you just have to laugh. So we used to joke all the time, about some of the things, that she did. It was, and some of them was hilarious, and so you do that. That is another stage, but then you feel guilty about laughing. But you know what? She made us so that we wouldn't feel guilty about that. She made it so that we embodied her spirit. That's the legacy that she left us. Um, Another stage is other people say weird things, and these are things that people they just say them because they think it's good and they think it's okay. But they say everything happens for a reason. They're in a better place. And so, typically I always say to myself, my practice is not throat punching well-meaning strangers. Because, I used to say that all the time. I just want to punch them in the throat. But my practice is not punching well meaning strangers because I'm sure that they just don't know what to say. And sometimes, and people don't realize this, but sometimes saying nothing is the best course of action. If you don't know what to say, sometimes you just need to shut the fuck up. you know? And that really is a thing. It's like, just be quiet. I had a pastor one time that used to say this thing. He was so funny. He said, sometimes people just be running off at the mouth and saying stuff. He said, and you know what you want to say? You want to say, shut up while you're talking. And that has stuck with me all these years because that thing was so funny when he said it, and I laughed, and probably I think probably a handful of people laughed. A lot of people didn't really know. I don't think they just don't know how to laugh. But I thought it was hilarious because there are times when you want to just say just that to people. Just shut up while you're talking. Just say, I'm holding space for you. I'm sending you love. Those things are wonderful and perfect. But not everything happens for a reason because nobody wants to hear that shit at those times. I didn't want to hear when my grandmother died that she was in a better place. I give a fuck about that. I wanted her to be here. Now that's my selfishness and that's okay. But I don't want to hear that. Don't tell me that. I don't want to hear. She's in a better place. And even though it may be true, because especially now, it's probably a better place than here because of all the crazy chaos that's going on in this world. So I digress. But another thing that people that happens is grief resurgence, and they say AKA ambush grief. So a lot of times is it happens like this, y'all, and it has happened like this so much for me. You think you're okay, and then a song or a smell or a rerun of their favorite show takes you down like a wrecking ball. Zero warning, nothing, nothing, you don't have any warning. I remember it happened to me the first time when I saw Matlock coming through because my grandparents loved that show. Oh my God, they loved Matlock. I think they loved Andy Griffith because they loved Mayberry too. Which coincidentally is where I say I live on the ocean. I believe that it's Mayberry on the ocean, the town that I live in. So peaceful, and I absolutely adore it. And I'm so grateful that I get to live here because it's like paradise. It's on the beach, even though it's, chilly, but it's still on the beach. I still can walk um, about 10 minutes and and be on the beach. So that to me is just amazing and remarkable. Now, are we at risk for like tsunamis and shit like that? Yeah, yeah, probably so. But do we really care? Nah, we don't. Hello, Miss May. Thank you for joining. Um, but that grief resurgence is one of those things that it just pops up and just comes on you and just hits you. And it's funny because I was talking to my sister-in-law today as well about my mother-in-law and her mother. And I was saying, she said, it was mama's birthday yesterday. And I said, oh my God, I knew something was going on. I knew it was somewhere around this time. I couldn't really remember the exact date, but I knew it was in this time period. And so I started experiencing things where, she was on my mind and I was just thinking about her, and I was like, oh my God, and I thought about, and this is funny. I thought about when we went to her funeral. We drove and we live in Washington State. Her funeral was in Mississippi. So we drove 40 hours, y'all. And people asked us, how were you in the car with, together for that long? And I was like, how are you? I don't understand the question. My husband and I, we love each other and we do these type of things and it's okay. We have a good time. And so that's what we did. And so I was thinking about that and I was like, wow, because what happened is she died one day. She died on a Sunday, yes. And then the very next Sunday, they were burying her because she already had everything taken care of, you know? So we had to jump in the car and just drive because, it was going to cost us a fortune to fly in that short amount of time, the notice, at least 2 weeks to try to get a decent plane ticket. And so we thought we'll save more money driving and we'll have fun. And so we did. We took the time and we drove. And it was amazing time. You know what I mean? Just the actual drive and it was peaceful and I was able to hold space for my husband because, it was his mother. And it wasn't that we did not know that that was going to happen. Like we really kind of I already knew. Like I had already seen it. I had intuitively seen it. So I knew. She had already broken her hip. So, typically after that, that usually is, you know, the steps that they're taking. But she had dementia as well too. And so, so it was something. And then just I remember we visited her before and she was so funny. So we actually had to sneak out of her facility because she kept getting her pocketbook trying to come with us. But but it was funny. I mean, we had such a blast, and my husband actually, I saw a part of my husband that was just amazing because he was just so patient and so calm with her, and I was like, wow, this is just amazing. Now I have training in that. I've been a nurse for 30 years and CNA before that for 3. So I had training 35 years, so I was okay. And I actually did that, although that's not my favorite type of nurse. And I don't like that. I don't like memory care. It's just not for me. I don't like it, but I know I can do it, and so I did, especially with her because I just felt something for her because I can't imagine having 11 freaking kids. Can't imagine. Can't imagine. No. And no twins. And she birthed them all. No C-sections. I had 2 C-sections, y'all. They cut my babies out of me. Couldn't have. I dilated to 5. And that was it for me. No, no more. That was it. I was done. And so they let me labor 20, 25, and 27. I don't know which one was. It was either 25 for one baby and 27 for the other one, but I don't remember which one was the longest. But it was that, and then C-sections, and they cut them out of me. So yeah, so it was a lot. So I think about that, and I think there's no way I could have gone through that 9 more times. No way. No. Period. No. But I think about it, and the thing about grief is it's personal. It is so personal. Like the levels that I have gone through with grief and experience. And for me, I think, excuse me, I think for me, I'm such an empath and I feel everything and everybody. And I've learned how to, um, how to shut it down for me, how to distract myself from that particular, picking up all the things, and so that has always been a struggle for me. And I did not even realize how much of a struggle it was. So the thing about it, grief is that we don't, there's not a blueprint for it. It's just like when you have a baby, you don't get a blueprint. They don't give you a manual. I told my kids that. They said something to me about something. I said, well, I didn't get a fucking manual when you were born. You came, I did what I knew. I asked some people, my grandmother, when she was available to ask, I asked her, that kind of thing. I asked older ladies in my life, different things. Plus, I was raising people's kids since I was 9, 10 years old. So I kind of had that down a little bit. But I when I considered that and I thought about, this grief thing, when it started coming to me, and I started realizing that, what, everybody grieves in their own way. Some people go numb. And then for me, um, I felt like I was grieving for a long time. And when I look back in my life, especially a couple of years after she transitioned, I felt like I was still in grief. I felt like I was still in mourning. And when I look back on the things that I did, I realized that I was still in mourning. I probably should have gotten some counseling then. I did not because I did not think about it. It's not the first thing as Black people that we go to is counseling, not at that time. Now we're a little bit more open and we're seeing therapists and talking to people and stuff like that. But that during that time, this was 20 years ago. um, yeah, that wasn't my first thought was I need to go see somebody. At that time, my first thought was, let me go and dive into church. Let me go and dive into religion. Let me go and seek God. That was my first thought on that. And then I realized that, you know, there are, other people out there that are dealing with the same type of things that I have. There are mental therapists and mental health experts that can help with this grief. There are groups that you can join, especially like Facebook has many, many groups. I'm on a few different groups, but they have many, many groups, different types of groups, that are talking about grief and helping people to get through them and to, motivate themselves in order to shift it. Because the thing is I believe that grief is always going to exist. Like we are always going to have grief. But what I feel is that we can um we can shift it so it doesn't shut us down. So we are shifting it so it doesn't shut us down, but it allows us to speak our truth in a way that's going to help somebody else. That's what I believe because I think that all of this grief that I have been through and that I'm still going through, like it's not over for me, y'all. I'm speaking on one side of it. Like I've gotten through the basic part of it just because it's been so long, in that. However, and she's like the most person. Well, she and my grandfather actually, both of them. But he died a little bit later than she did. And the way that and I talked to him like right before he died too. So that was a whole nother thing for me that it felt like coming home, because I spoke to him probably about an hour before he transitioned. And when I talked to him, he sounded like himself. My grandfather was amazing. You would have never known that he was dying, when I talked to him, that he was going to be dead an hour later. Never known it, not by talking to him. So that did something for my heart with him. It almost like it calmed my nervous system down, because they were like the closest people to me, and I felt like if nobody else in the world loved me, they did. So, um, another thing is, grief comes in waves, like I'm experiencing it right now, in a major way, but tomorrow is going to be different. I mean, tomorrow I'll wake up and I'll feel differently because that's how that goes. It's like you're in it. It's almost like you feel like you're in a mud pile, one day, like you're in that mud pile. And it's like, oh my God, what do I do? But then you realize that you can get out. You can get out anytime you want to. You just have to decide and you have to set intentions. The one thing I can say about grief is it's messy. It's maddening. Sometimes it's funny as shit, hilarious. Sometimes, when we grieve, people look at you differently because they say, oh, well, you shouldn't grieve like that, but you can't tell anybody how to grieve. We all grieve in our own unique ways. The one thing I can say is be patient with yourself if that's something that you're dealing with. Be patient with yourself. You know, sit down and talk to God. I'm telling you, there were days and times where I just sat down and I talked to God. Just like I'm talking to y'all now, I was talking to God. I don't know if I can do this, God. I don't know why this thing happened, because they were never supposed to leave me. This was how I thought. So they were never supposed to leave me. If they were gonna go, they should took me with them. This is how I thought. Even though, I had kids at the time, you know, had my ex-husband at the time, so just the thought of all of that is like, oh my God. But it's how grief does you. It's just who messy and crazy, and it could cause you to do crazy things because I'm telling you I did. I did crazy things, and I didn't even know that I was doing those things. Like, when I look back, it's like I look back and I see all the stuff I did. I was like, "Why did I do that?" I'm asking myself now, when I look at it, like, "Why did I do that?" And I think about my poor kids. I'm like, "Lord Jesus, I was all in the middle of that grief, you know, raising them." But, God is good. God is good because they turned out. They turned out well, and I'm so appreciative. And my kids, I love them so much, and they were there for me even in that grief. And I think about that. I feel like sometimes we don't understand why we are put in certain situations, and we don't understand why people are around us. Like, I think about my kids, and I think so many times that they were there to help me and to save my life. Because there were times without, if I didn't have them, I'd been like, you know what? I just need to go with my grandparents. I don't need to stay here, because for me, this is not my home anyway. Like, there's no way I could be from this chaotic place because I like peace too much. And it's just too chaotic. And it's sometimes too much for me, you know? However, I know that the reason I'm here is to do just what I'm doing, to share about all of these different things, and to share in a way that you can understand, in a way that you can know that, I'm not special. I'm just like you in that I grieve as well. And even though I teach these things, and also I know that my grandparents are not dead, they just transitioned. I speak to my grandmother every day. She has become one of my guides. She always was, but she has become an ancestor. She's one of my guides. And so, even though I know this, I still grieve for them in the flesh. And I don't know how to even share that except to say that. And there are so many of us that know this, but we still, like I still would love to pick up the phone and call her. I still would love for her to call me. I had their phone numbers in my phone for years until I had to get new phones, different things, situations. But I had their phone numbers in my phone for years. And I think I even had some voicemails on my phone for years, because I just miss the sound of their voices, and I just felt so much love. So I hope this has helped somebody, and I hope that, that grief comes in waves, and it's not linear at all. You can experience all of those different stages and steps of grief independently. You can experience all of them, uh, or none of them. It's just really according to how you grieve, because we all grieve differently. You see people at funerals that just scream and holler and act really nutty, you know, and then you see other people that go there and they're not doing any of that. You know what I mean? So it's just how grief hits you, and I feel like it hits you the hardest if you have guilt about the way that you treated the person. You know, I think that it probably hits you deep, way, way harder. And I just feel that because I don't know. Because I try to treat everybody kindly. That's what they taught me, you know, be kind, treat everybody kindly, you know, try not to do anybody wrong, try to love yourself and people. And so that's what I do. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me. Ms. May, thank you for hanging out with me. I appreciate you. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for listening. Thank you for just observing. And thank you for opening up the door to understanding your own version of grief for yourself. I have a membership. Um, Remember who TF you are. I would love to see you in there. I'm looking for founding members right now. $25 a month is all it is. Join us. Um, 2 Zoom calls a month. Usually one will be a workshop and then one will be a call. And then you have access to me on all these places. Um, if there's enough people that want a Facebook group, I would do one. But right now it's just in a community on the Stand Store. So we have a whole community already. Because a lot of people are not want to do Facebook, and I get that. But that's something that we're doing. And I am so super excited about it. If you also are looking for I do soul mirror readings. It's a new session that I created that I'm just excited about. But it's a soul mirror reading. And if you would like to have one of those, definitely reach out to me or check in my Stand Store. It's Stand Store at Intuitive Taming. Also, I have Manifesting Your Soulmate bundle. So it's a workbook as well as a meditation activation. So definitely check that out, those things in the Stand Store. I really appreciate you. Thank you for subscribing. I really appreciate it. Y'all don't even know. I'm so appreciative. I love each and every one of you because without you, I wouldn't be here. You know what? I'm so excited and I'm grateful that you guys are here just, listening to what I have to say because I feel like, my throat chakra has opened up and I have some things that I need to share. I'm also 56 years old, y'all. I am working on 57 in November, but I am 56 years old. And so I got some shit to talk about. So again, thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for joining me. Those on YouTube, thank you for joining me and thank you for subscribing as well and liking and sharing this channel and this content out. But I do so appreciate you and I have more. I'll be back on again tomorrow. Thank you for joining. Bye now.